Hello, my name is Malinda Scott here, and in this video presentation, I'll be talking about a podcast by Jordan Firework called Is Copyright Getting Tougher in episode 78. So let's jump into it. I want to do a quick snapshot of what I'll be explaining. I will be explaining three concepts that I took from this podcast. I want to make sure you know the connections that my business have with the information in this podcast. And finally, I want to talk about how I can implement everything that I learned throughout this podcast and how it can help my business with future dealings. As I stated before, I took one concept that I learned from three different stories. So, what are the concepts I learned? They are each state has their own version of right of publicity statute. Age discrimination being eliminated, but that brings in the First Amendment issue. And when it comes to copyrighted material, it cannot be a short phrase, and of course other information on that. The first concept that I learned was from a story from Lindsay Lohan. Lindsay Lohan sued the makers of Grand Theft Auto because a character likeness to her. What I thought was interesting that I learned was that, of course, as I stated before, each state has their version of right of publicity. And in this case, Lindsay Lohan's claim didn't go through because her name, portrait, or picture was not used. Also, when it comes to the video game itself, it did not deal with actual advertising, and the game was considered a work of fiction. So it's based on a make-believe storyline. So that's why I didn't go through. The second concept that I learned was from a story about how actors may keep their age confidential on entertainment job websites such as IMDb. What I learned and thought was interesting from this concept was that in this industry there are people constantly being judged by their age, and SAG and after a push to try to eliminate age discrimination, but at the same time this brings up the First Amendment issue. The third concept that I learned was from a story of how hard it's getting to get things copywritten. What I learned and I thought was interesting was that phrases cannot be is not copyrightable. All materials that can be copywritten has to be deemed original and that they have to be distinctive enough. I also learned that short phrases cannot be copywritten, and in this section of the podcast, they talked about how tweets cannot be copywritten as well. All the concepts and the information that I mentioned is connected to my business in a lot of ways, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to narrow down just a few. When it comes to my business, I have to make sure that all my business material is copywritten and that is original and distinctive. Also, knowing the different laws in each state can make a difference in my business as well. So, how would I implement this when it comes to my business and the future dealings of my business? I would like to talk about just one of my concerns, which I think is the most important out of all three of these, and that would be knowing each state law before negotiating a deal with either my business directly or when it comes to my talent that I'm working with. I went over three concepts that I took away from this podcast, and for my final thought, I wanted to talk to you about everything that I covered. So I covered the connection between the information in my business, and I shared with you how I could implement what I learned. I hope you learned something throughout this video and that and what I went over in this podcast, which is called Is Copyright Getting Tougher, episode 78. If you want to learn more about this topic, you can go ahead and visit entertainmentlawupdate.com and you can just type up Is Copyright Getting Tougher, episode 78. So thanks for being here. Also, I have included the information here on this slide, so that way you can go and visit if you would like to get more information on it, or if you want more of different stories. They have a lot of episodes on there. Thank you again for your time.